I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Andy Nelson.
Welcome to the next reel. When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
The Cassandra Crossing is over. Congratulations, Colonel. They are finally in quarantine. Hi, Andy. Welcome to the Cassandra Crossing. Don't cross this bridge.
Right? Yeah.
Oh, man.
How many times did we cut to the bridge, just sitting there in isolation, watching watching the bolts rust, watching the wind shake the beams loose that were barely attached?
If there was any question that the Cassandra Crossing would be dangerous, this movie actually cements it. Like, it nails peril.
Yeah.
More than just about anything. This movie is so good, I laughed almost the whole way through. I loved my time with this movie. So in the Robert Ebert school of does the movie succeed at what it wanted to do? 1,000 stars and 50 hands with thumbs up. I laughed the whole time. It was hysterical. I cannot believe not only had I not seen this movie before, I had never heard of it, and it pushed all my wonderful buttons.
All of Pete's wonderful buttons have been pushed, everybody.
They've been pushed all in a row. It's like somebody just pushing buttons, having a real heyday.
Well, it's interesting because this speaks to, I think, perhaps what film critics were looking for at the time, and even fans, because I also had an awful lot of fun with this film. It was goofy the way you kind of expect some of these disaster films to be. It was kind of the whole thing just so over the top as far as the plot and all of the different bits and pieces that had to happen in order for all this stuff to work. But it just made for this totally silly movie. And I just wonder if this was 1976, if audiences and critics were just kind of getting tired of just like superhero movies now, like we're getting tired of the same old thing. It's like we've seen these plot points set up over and over again. It's just more of the same. Critics at the time, these are some of the quotes from it. Profoundly, offensively stupid. Ava Gardner is awful in an awful role. Sophia Loren is totally miscast. It is an unintentional parody of a disaster film. The catastrophes that befall the passengers of a Geneva to Copenhagen train in the picture are positively ridiculous. It's a tired, hokey, and sometimes unintentionally funny disaster film in which a trainload of disease-exposed passengers lurch to their fate. So you can see, people were really not vibing with this film at the time.
I just have to say, all of that, 5 stars and a heart.
Well, and I think that's the thing. And I'm glad you mentioned Roger Ebert, because I don't know if I called him out. I'm trying to see if there were any quotes from him here. I don't see any, but it does fit into that tone of like, they set out to kind of create this over-the-top disaster film, and they succeeded. I'm not saying it's like fantastic filmmaking or anything like that, but man, did I have a fun time watching it too.
The guy that helped Burt Lancaster, the guy who invited him on a date after, at the end, it's quiet, and it's a quiet place. Maybe we could go sit in the dark and get some coffee. The only thing that would have made this, sort of leaned in more heavily on the comedy is had he actually said, "Looks like I picked the wrong day to quit sniffing glue." Like, this movie has so many of those beats, and I am here for it. I am so here for it. Okay, so the premise. Let's just talk about the setup. Did I freeze again, or are you just sitting real still?
No, you just clicked for a second. Your internet went crackled.
I hate this right now. I don't get it. Okay. So what we have to talk about with the setup of the movie, we've got some protesters, and the protesters want to break into the World Health Organization. Or is that it?
No,
or
International Health. It was the International Health Organization.
International
I'm
Health
assuming they
Organization.
had to change the name.
Yes.
I don't know.
Yeah, nobody knew what they were talking about. And so they broke in to do something. We don't really know what they were going to do because
they were going to bomb it. They set a bomb.
Oh, that's what that was, a bomb.
Yeah.
The thing in the hallway that looks very much like a car battery. So I'll tell you where my head was. I thought they needed a car battery to somehow wire their way through an electric lock.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
Interesting.
but bomb is
Yeah.
fine. So anyway, they have this bomb in the act of escape because they are discovered because of shenanigans. They end up somehow way too easily in a biohazard lab, and the soldiers themselves, due to stray bullets, guns are bad, actually shoot a glass jar full of this disease that splashes upon the boys in their escape efforts. And
Right.
one of them makes it out of the building, jumps, I would say, a number of stories.
I was surprised. I felt like they were, well, no, I guess they were ground level. They never go up in an elevator, do they?
No, I guess that's true. True. Still felt like he was airborne maybe for a while. And then he runs some number of miles to get to the train station where he gets on board. And that's when things start to go awry. That's when things start to go awry. Emphasis is important here.
Right.
Are you in it for the setup?
It was fun. I mean, I had a fun time with it. It, to a certain extent, doesn't make a whole lot of sense,
Doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. It was, we had these terrorist groups who were, for some reason, bombing the health organization. And we do see their business card at some point. We actually see the we see the terrorist business cards. Right. Yeah. So we do get to see that. I can't remember. It was the Swiss, Swiss for peace or something. It was like, okay, but they're bombing the hospital.
But if you need to find me on LinkedIn after this, let's connect.
And so it's just, I mean, it's silly. And then, of course, you've got the U.S., which, I mean, I felt like there must be some dig on what the U.S. was doing, because we have the Dr. Stradner, played by Ingrid Thulin, who is, when she's the one who's trying to deal with this patient and figure out what it is. And of course, she's up against Colonel Mackenzie, Burt Lancaster's over-the-top colonel, who's, she's really only there to be his punching bag through the film. She is like trying to figure out what this thing is, and he won't give her any information. And she just wants to help. And of course, the dig is that, of course, it's the U.S. who is working on this communicable disease, and they won't do it in their own country, so they're storing it in Switzerland because that's the way the U.S. operates. I couldn't help but think, I like that. There's a little bit of a dig.
Yeah, they got it right.
That was Cosmatos being a little political with his.
You might say
here.
Practically documentarian. That bit.
Yeah. And nothing has changed.
Nothing has changed. Yeah, that's right. Well, so from there, once we get to the train, we start getting the sort of marquee introductions of our stars.
Yeah.
And they're good. Like one of the reasons that I picked this movie to add to this list of disease films is because it is such a massive cast of big names in this disaster movie, and it just felt provocative to me to see Sophia Loren and Richard Harrison, Martin Sheen and OJ and Lionel Stander and Ann Turkel and Lee Strasberg, Ava Gardner, Burt Lancaster. Like, this is a crazy cast of travelers and train workers that we are dealing with here, going across Europe. And they are all of them. They all understood the assignment. They're
all, over the top, having fun.
Yeah.
And what's great about all of this is that they're giving us this, a typical train setup here of all the different groups coming on board. We kind of, you always have that where you kind of get to know everybody as they're getting the setup. Everyone's kind of gathering into the one place where they're all going to have their lives threatened. But on top of this virus that's on the train, you also have a junkie who badly needs his fix, and at one point grabs guns, or has guns and is threatening people's lives and everything. So you've got that aspect going as well. You have the threat of the government refusing to shut things down, and so they have people on the train with guns, and so it becomes more than just kind of like, how are we going to stop this virus? It becomes kind of like, we're having gunfights by the time we get to the end. And it, of course, is all building to this point where the train has to cross this bridge that is old and rickety and completely unsafe and likely going to collapse when this train comes upon it. And that, of course, is so disaster. You have all these different things happening. And it's just, I don't know, it built in the most ridiculous of ways and it made it all the more fun.
I think we got to start, though, with the first disaster, which is the Luke Hestel is the Swedish terrorist, who he's the one who makes it onto the train and starts sweating profusely. And the most intense sequences that we have in the first act of this movie are watching him decide that he wants to, stretch his legs and start wandering out of the baggage car into the other cars. And I was so disgusted by how they captured this in the best way. Like, he's, first of all, Andy, you take trains. You've been on a train.
I've been on trains, yes.
So when you walk up and down a train, do you spend a lot of time touching the other passengers? Did you see how many times he caresses characters? Like the children, like he'll just pick up a child. Luckily, the nanny was upset by that. That was redemptive. But he's like touching shoulders and faces, and he's just rubbing like rubbing. So much rubbing. And that was perfect until he, of course, gets to the dining car.
Not the dining car, the kitchen.
The kitchen, right, the kitchen. Dining car adjacent.
Yes.
And he is in the kitchen, and he gets some water, but he just can't hold back a sneeze. And he sneezes directly into a bowl of prepped rice.
Yeah.
And we get a lingering, longing shot of the bowl of rice after this happens. And some sort of a crash music sting, and the movie's over. Everybody's dead. The movie's over. He sneezed in the rice. Don't ever sneeze in the rice. That is an incredibly intense moment of food-based disease.
And it's so funny because this is a guy who's near death. I mean, he lives a lot longer than his buddy, but as we find out, his brother or his buddy also had been shot. And so the virus got in to his blood. So he, his reaction was much quicker and ended up dying. This guy, like, it's just taken a long time for him to go through the process. And for a while, I was like, okay, he's clearly dying. He curls up next to the dog, and the dog, I was like, okay, so now at some point he's going to die, and it's going to be the dog that ends up giving it to everybody. I was convinced because he drinks out of the dog's water bowl, and then you see the dog drinking out of the water bowl. I'm like, oh, God.
That's going to be it.
That poor dog. This is the end of everybody. But as you said, I was surprised to then see our terrorist wandering the halls. It's like, I thought he was sick and dying back in the luggage car. But no, he's now going to walk around. And it's funny because it comes right after we cut to Burt Lancaster in his war room, we'll just call it, talking about, like, we don't know what's going on in there. For all we know, he could be walking around, like, talking to all the passengers. We've got to stop this whole this train of 1,000 people from doing anything because it can be a total disaster. And I was like, well, we haven't seen that yet, those. And then, of course, we cut to him, like, he's walking through the hallways. I was like, oh, boy. Yep.
It's so good. It's so good. You're right. But sidebar. Did you believe at any point that there were 1,000 people on this train?
It really didn't feel like it.
Not once.
No. A couple hundred, I would have said. 1,000 people seems like that's a really big train.
That's like 20. What would that be? I mean, so like at 50 people a car, 20 cars? No, that's not even it.
Well, because 50 people a car, like in the cars where it's all just seats, like second class sort of
but
seats.
That's not
like
accurate.
First class, you're getting probably like 5 people per cabin max, 5, maybe 6. And there's, I don't know, like 10 of the, well, I guess 5 of those. So, I don't know. Anyway, it would have to be a really long train to hit 1,000 people. Especially
because the car that Martin Sheen and Ava Gardner were in.
Yeah.
That was like a whole car for them, for her suitcases. Okay. So that's the first disaster, is the fact that this disease is clearly loose in the train.
Yeah, walking around the hallways, right?
It's walking the hall, sneezing in food. The second, you already mentioned the second disaster, which is the fact that Martin Sheen's a drug mule. He's a yoga practicing playboy drug mule with a rock climbing habit. And that was delightful because what do you think he was? I can find that out. How old do you think he was?
And,
when he did this movie?
You didn't mention he's also her boy toy. He is totally Ava Gardner's little boy toy. Yeah. and this is just also like, what? Why is this a thing? It doesn't matter because it just adds to the characters. Ava Gardner's character is the wife of an arms dealer. Like, let's not forget that was thrown in also.
That was thrown in for one line, right? Oh, right. My husband makes these.
He'd be so glad that you're using his guns.
Referencing the soldiers' guns. Oh my goodness, it was so good. So he was Martin Sheen was 36 years old when he made this movie. Just for comparison, OJ was 29. OJ is younger than Sheen in this movie.
How old was Gardner?
53.
Okay.
How old was Richard Harris? Just take a guess. This is fun. Guess the ages.
45.
46. Andy.
Oh, look at that.
You've been studying. Sophia Loren?
I would say she's 37.
42. This
okay.
is a relationship. Now, let's just say this is a character backstory bit that I thought was really delightful. Yeah. They are ex-spouses twice.
Right.
And that's a good joke. That ends up playing really well. I've divorced her twice and I still can't get rid of her. Like, it's just awesome. And the fact that she is not a 20-something, kid, it makes this relationship actually believable. Like, I really enjoyed their ex dynamic. I thought it was great.
Yeah. No, it was fun. I was a little surprised. It was like, Sophia Loren is top billed in this. I wonder why. And I'm like, oh, that's right. Her husband was the producer, one of the producers of this film, Carlo Ponti, who she was married to. Yeah. One of the two people who had put all the financing into the film. So I'm like, oh, okay. So it was really a Sophia Loren vehicle that he had put together for her, and so then built it from there. And Richard Harris's wife at the time was also in this, Ann Turkle, the singer who ends up getting sick. She was, I think, were they married? Yeah, they married in 74 and divorced in 82. So, yeah. So several, and she's the one with the terrible song. We didn't even mention this is the period when you've got these random songs that completely stop the film. That was a disaster in and of itself.
Third disaster, train music.
It's like the hippie band on the train just stopping. I was like, okay, this is their pitch to try getting this song nominated as one of the best songs at the Oscars, because there's no other reason to have that happen in the film.
There is a moment later where the guy, the bearded hippie band member, they have the soldiers holding a gun on him, and he says, "Well, you could point that down, man. What are you doing? You don't have to point that at me. Do you believe what he's doing here, man?" And I was like, that line should have gotten a close up. He's so whiny.
Well, and what's great is, like, even later he has a gun and is shooting back at the at the guys. So, oh man.
So let's just zoom in just a little bit on one name that really, really sticks out to me. And that name is Lee Strasberg. There is a joke that is at work here that I can't quite refine about Lee Strasberg playing the role that he's playing in this movie. Like, does one of the greats in the history of performative art deserve a character like Herman Kaplan? And after he has played this role, can anyone else possibly live up to it? Right? Like, this guy is the stuff of legend. The stuff of legend, Lee Strasberg, in terms of theatrical teaching. Yeah. He founded the first group theater, America's first true theatrical collective in 1931. In 51, he was the director of the Actors Studio in New York City. He is the father of method acting in America. Like, the guy has taught everybody, many of them who have done their turn in 70s disaster films, let's say. And Bancroft, Dustin Hoffman, Montgomery Clift, Marlon Brando, James Dean, Marilyn Monroe, Julie Harris, Paul Newman, Al Pacino, Robert De Niro, director Elia Kazan. Like these, like the fingerprints of Lee Strasberg are on everybody else in this movie. And he is playing a watch shill who, it turns out, massive twist, was a resident in a concentration camp. I love Lee Strasberg in this movie. Monologue over. What did you think?
I was, part of it was like, I'm wondering, like, are they going a little too far with this character? Like,
you were watching the rest of the movie though, right?
Yeah, no. It's so, okay. Like, so they leave Switzerland. And they have their goal is to get to, I think, Copenhagen. I think, is that the final destination of the train, or I think it goes even further. Anyway, they end up veering off and they go into Poland, and he's freaking out. And we know, okay, he was a resident of a concentration camp, and or a prisoner at a concentration camp. His family had been killed. His wife and children had all been killed. And that pushes him at one point to try fleeing, right? Like, he actually gets off the train at a stop point in Nuremberg and tries to escape, and ends up getting winged by a bullet and forced back on. And then the other thing is, like, he was the one who had lived in the village under the Cassandra Crossing bridge, and knew all of the how dangerous this bridge was, and that it was not a bridge that was ever repaired, and couldn't believe that it was still standing, and knew that, like, the whole town moved out because they were afraid that the bridge was going to collapse upon them, in fact. And all of that was which, I don't know, just an odd little bit of, I shouldn't say a little bit. It just seemed like an odd lot of exposition for one character to be written to have. And that was my complaint with him. Is just like, man, they really have to force feed a lot of exposition into this character just so the people on the train can have some sense of an understanding of all of this. Now, I still had a fun time watching him. Like, he's the old guy who's like doing tricks with scarves and coins and whatever with the kids, and always trying to sell watches, and perhaps a little stereotyped in some ways, but I liked the character. It's just, that was the element I'm like, God, I wish they found a stronger way to get the exposition into the story.
That's interesting. That's an interesting commentary on this role. I didn't share that problem, mostly because I just had such joy every time I was watching him. I don't think I thought about it that much. Like, I just love, who's he going to try and sell a watch to next? Like, he just has all the answers. And the fact that they take us from there, this sort of menial character who is, C-string at best, to the guy who sacrifices his life for the sake of others' survival and for his own sense of escape, felt like it felt weighty to me. Like, it felt interesting, and I think we also get enough of a contrast between Burt Lancaster's monologue on how many millions of dollars the Polish government has spent to retrofit this bridge, intercut with scenes of the bridge literally falling apart.
Right. So many shots, yes.
So many shots that
even dramatic ones in the fog. I'm like, wow, they're really
great music stings on top of that too. Like, the music was scared of this bridge.
Well, Jerry Goldsmith, one of the great J's,
one of my
10 J's, and the fun score here. I'll give you that with Strasberg's character, like the sacrifice and everything that he made. Like, there were interesting elements with him. I think for me, the problem was just the exposition. Like, I really would have loved for the filmmakers to find a different way to get this exposition into the train so people knew about the bridge. I mean, that was largely it. The people, because it wasn't coming from Mackenzie, Colonel Mackenzie. He wasn't talking to the people on the train about the unsafe nature of this bridge, right? And so somebody had to, on the train, figure out that this bridge was going to be unsafe, and so it all had to come really out of his mouth. Yeah.
Well, that's really good because it reminds me of the balancing act that this movie is undertaking for two of the disasters, right? The first one is the disease itself. How many times, like, make a drinking game out of this movie trying to avoid a panic, right? Like, they don't want people to know about the disease. And yet, they kind of do want people to know about the bridge, because the tension between those two interests is what's going to help them sort of survive and contain the disease at the same time.
Yeah, right.
And I think that's actually that his character in that way is sort of, carrying the weight of the second conflict, which is like, let's figure out how to gently spread the word, and why not put it in the mouth of this guy who demonstrably talks to everybody, because that's his job. How's he going to make any money if he doesn't talk to everybody? And I think that's really interesting to me.
Did he actually steal Jonathan's watch? Like, did he somehow like pull it off of him only to try selling it back to him?
Yes. And and that's why he put both hands. Yeah, he's a total con man. And that was a fantastic flex, right? Tell me you didn't like Google, how do you take somebody's watch off without them knowing after that?
Right.
Because that's a thing I want to get good at. I want to figure out how to do that.
I marvel that is a part of his character. Like, not only does he do all these tricks with the kids and sell watches, but he also cons people into buying back their own watches. It's crazy. Yeah.
So good. So good.
It was interesting. I'll give you that. You're selling me on it, making me think that there's more reason for it to be there. It's just the rough exposition, but
that's going to be my job today.
It's a film of all of that. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it is. Well, speaking of, I don't know, rough exposition, not at all. It's O.J. Simpson. Can we talk about his role as first a priest, then briefly a thug because tattoos, and then an international member of law enforcement?
That was funny because he comes on board as a priest in a pretty stylish priest outfit, I will say.
Best.
It's kind of like dark gray and light gray instead of like the black and white. I'm like, interesting choice to go with here. And of course, he's in the train car with the nanny and the little girl, and won't pray at the meal. And he said the little girl is just like, aren't you going to pray? And he's just like, you prayed enough for me. I was like, okay.
All right. No priest ever.
Right.
There's never enough prayer. Come on.
And they really missed out on the opportunity. There's also a nun on the train, and they missed out on the opportunity of having some interchange between this fake priest and the nun, because I'm sure that would have just really made for comedic bits. But no, it worked, I think. But it was funny because it paired him with the little girl. And at one point, she's blowing bubbles in the train car. And like all of these things, I'm like, they're going to do everything possible to annoy this person with this child in their cabin. And that was a blast to watch because it just really played into it. It was fun.
Yeah. I think it was funny. It was the part of parts that sort of stick out because this cast is so stacked. His part stuck out the most because there's nothing that telegraphs like blend in about O.J. Simpson playing a priest. Like nothing about that casting. Indicated that I was not supposed to keep my eye on him the entire time. So,
and you brought up the tattoo, and that was funny because, he's putting a bag away or something, and his sleeve pulls up, and this little girl sees that he's got this tattoo on his arm, and she gasps and looks up at him like, and I was like, and my wife was just like, oh, this is the era before tattoos were a thing, when it was kind of a shock to see somebody in a tattoo, but also seeing a priest with a tattoo, I think is part of it. But still, it's just like, it was funny that was such a moment to actually have this, tattoo be dangerous.
Yes. So transitioning to Richard Harris as our principal on-site medical professional, a brilliant neurosurgeon on his way to receive some award. He takes on the de facto role of medical smarts. We might call him the train's Fauci.
Every train needs one.
Every train needs a Fauci. This is the ultimate. Is there a doctor on board? You have Anthony Fauci. Right. Even though they've told us nothing about his background in, virology.
Well, and that's what's so funny. He's a neurosurgeon, which is a particular path that you go down. And then when Herman, Strasberg's character, gets shot, he's just like, a bullet wound. That's something that I can fix. Yeah, I was
I'm
just
also
like,
an ER triage.
But I thought you were a neurosurgeon.
Yeah. So I thought that was great. And he does absolve the movie of one disaster with one line that I thought was a fantastic narrative sin in this movie and did laugh out loud. Among many times I laughed out loud during this movie, where he's kneeling down and he's talking to Sophia Loren, and he's talking to Lionel Stander, and they're all looking around at Swedish Tourist, and he looks up and says, "If you haven't caught it already, you're not going to," which is balls there. Like, to say that knowing nothing about the disease. Right. I mean, that is the get out of jail free card for this movie. Yeah. We are no longer worried about the spread of disease because Martin Sheen has to climb up on the train and get scared and then climb on the outside of the train and then get shot and fall off. And we have to have O.J. Simpson out himself as actually law enforcement. And we have to, there's so much that has to happen. If we're still thinking about the disease, this movie is screwed.
Right. Yeah, you got to get the sick people sick quick. Yep. And 60% of them have to get sick. We know it's a 60-40 split. Yes. And so all of our heroes we know have to fall into the 40%. And also, I will say, it was a fun reveal for Martin Sheen, who seems like he's getting sick. But then you have the good doctor, getting ready to give him a shot, roll up his sleeve and realize, you don't actually need a shot medicine right now. Like, you
was so good.
Yeah, that was fun.
That was so good. Artfully crafted twist.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
and Martin Sheen. Yeah. Martin Sheen's like intensity in a movie where a lot of people were giving their all and chewing up scenery. Martin Sheen sort of dominates, because when he turns around and has that conversation with Ava Gardner and he tells her all of our international back and forth stuff, none of it was for you, baby. None of it was for you. I was on the edge of my seat. I was like, what movie am I watching right now? He is so good. He's so good.
My wife just was like, what a dick.
Yeah.
That was the dickiest of dick moves to just say all of that. And then he completely flip-flops with it and is just like, looking out for her and everything. But I'm like, well, he kind of already proved how much of an ass he is. So.
Yeah. But she also proved how much she didn't care.
That's true. She really does.
Boy toy.
Yeah.
That's fine. She's using him too.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. Which
that
was so
tool.
fun. Like, I loved that she was totally game to play that. Like, she played right into it. Ava Gardner was just clearly having fun in that.
I actually, I told my wife about it, and because she did not watch it with me. And then we were going to bed last night. And she said, maybe you could try doing a headstand on the bed with your legs spread in the air. Would you do that for me? And I said, is our marriage on the line if I don't? Because I think there's a line. Martin Sheen is just boss. I love Martin Sheen.
Well, that was also so funny because Max, this is the train conductor, Lionel Stander, who's walking around like he's taking tickets, I'm assuming. But the first time we see him stop at one of the cabins to take tickets, that's when the hippies are all singing their song, and he's just standing in the door watching, and they're like, come on, and he's like, that's okay, and just keeps going. I'm like, oh, he didn't take their tickets. And then he's just opening doors. He opens the door, and that's when Martin Sheen is doing his headstands on the door, and he sees all that happening, and he just smiles. I'm like, he's not, what's he doing? His job is to take tickets and make sure people are passengers. But
look, I'm going to say this as somebody who lives in this state. Max, the train conductor, has ADHD. There's no question in my mind. I think of the tickets he needed to take, what did he take? 3?
Too distracted. Too distracted.
He forgets like that.
Yeah.
What he's supposed to do.
So funny. And this is just totally weird. I can't help but feel there had to be some fans of this movie who went on to make. Do you remember the TV show Heart to Heart?
Yes.
Yeah. Robert Wagner and Stephanie Powers.
Yeah.
It started in 1979. Do you know what the 2 characters are named? Obviously, you know their last name, Hart, but their first names, Jonathan and Jennifer. Just like here, Jonathan and Jennifer. And you know who they work with? Lionel Stander. And you know who he plays in that show? He plays Max.
Andy.
What is like?
You've uncovered a conspiracy that goes all the way to the top.
Sidney Sheldon created that show. I have to think was a big fan of the Cassandra Crossing.
It has to be.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
What are the odds? Jonathan and Jennifer and Max.
Are there any other? I'll bet all of the guest performances on Heart to Heart are like Haley and Robbie and Stephen and Susan.
Susan, right.
Where's Elena?
Yeah, right. I'll have to dig deeper. But yeah, that's a weird little bit of trivia for you.
That is outstanding.
Yeah.
What do you think of the? What do you think of the look of the thing? Shooting on trains is a challenge, and sometimes blocking on trains is a challenge.
Well, and all the trains, the scenes were shot on sound stages in I can't remember where, Italy, and all of the exteriors were actually filmed in the countries. And so, I mean, I was actually pretty I really enjoyed the opening. We're starting in the Alps. We're seeing the beauty of the Swiss Alps. And then we come down into Geneva on a great helicopter shot that kind of flies down.
So good.
Dips right toward the water and then comes in up to the IHO as it is here. Beautiful. And same thing we get at the end, another beautiful helicopter shot. I just love that they were doing that and got some great shots of the train running through the countryside and everything, like some beautiful, beautiful shots of it in and out of the tunnels in the Swiss Alps. So I really enjoyed what they were doing here with the production. It wasn't overly flashy. It didn't do anything creative with the kind of camera work or anything like that, but I did like that they were kind of crafting those. If anything, I feel like the shots of the bridge were probably the most dramatic things that we had going on here, especially like the foggy shots and just all the rusty bolts and everything. Like that was the dramatic stuff. But
and you can find the bridge. It's called the Garabit Viaduct in France.
Right.
And it is, at least according to satellite images, it's still there. It didn't fall down in the don't worry, everybody. They didn't blow it up. And it's still there, and it's beautiful. It's a beautiful bridge.
It's built by Gustav Eiffel, who would build the Eiffel Tower. So certainly somebody who had his architectural understandings.
It does have some Eiffel vibes, right?
It does, yeah.
It's got those tower vibes. Yeah. I think that's really great. So fantastic. You want to talk about Jerry?
Well, I was now I'm stuck on this bridge and I'm trying to look and see, is it still in use for anything? Until September 11th, 2009, one regular passenger train each way passed daily over it. A core rail route from Clermont-Ferrand to Béziers. On that date, the viaduct was closed after cracks were discovered in one of the foundation piles. After a safety inspection, it reopened the following month with a speed limit of 10 kilometers per hour, 6 miles per hour for all traffic. So it is still open, but they're smart. They actually do check it, and they saw cracks in the foundation, repaired it, and yes, it is still in operation as of today.
And note, in the movie, they put the bridge in Poland so that they could blame the Polish government, because I'm sure the French would never allow that since it's actually in France.
Right. Yeah. Okay, before we talk about Jerry, can we talk about the disaster itself with the bridge and just like the effects work? How did that play for you? Because it doesn't take long. Like they finally managed the whole thing that they decide that they're going to do on the train is they're going to split it in half, and because they can't get to the front to stop it. And so they're going to split the train in half, and hope that the first half that goes forward is now going to be light enough to be able to go across it. And it has much fewer passengers on it, and most of the bad guys, who, of course, just the government people in white suits. Theoretically, I thought they were all doctors working with Jonathan, but no, they're actually just guys with guns that don't do any medical work.
Yeah, right.
And then you have the back half, which is like all the passengers kind of move to the back half. Although I will say, there still seemed like an awful lot of passengers on the front half.
Oh, yes. I agree.
I was surprised. I was like, I thought they were trying to get everybody back.
No, they were trying to separate the sick people, right? Like,
so
there
all
is
the
a
sick
lot
people
of,
are on the front. Yeah,
the sick people are dead, is what we're saying.
Well, but they're better now, right? Because didn't everybody heal?
That's the drama, Andy, for crying out loud. That's why Burt Lancaster is in this movie, to make us hate America. Because Burt Lancaster killed a bunch of sick people who were better, like the dog.
Yeah, they were all better. Everybody on front. I love the idea. This is like something out of Airplane, I'm sure, but somebody's like, oh, I feel better. And then they immediately fall into something else and get hurt.
Step on a rake. Right.
Yeah, exactly. It's like that sort of thing. All of these people, finally, they're getting all this extra oxygen because the doctors and the government put on these oxygen tanks to pump into the things. Everybody is now better because too much oxygen kills the virus. But then they all get taken over a bridge and died. I got to say, the effects for this, it was awfully fun to watch. It was much more violent than my wife or I expecting. Like seeing that girder rip through the train and go right through a guy.
It went through a guy.
Was not expecting that.
Oh my God. And the train cars that got smashed. And so people who were in facing seats getting crushed together.
Right.
That's horrifying.
Right. Yeah. They did some crazy stuff with the violence on this, enough to get an R rating. And they had to actually create another cut of this for all the broadcast and TV media that they were playing. But I was just like, that was... And
the use of fire, the use of flame in depicting the violence and the death as the thing came down, and then cutting to external shots as the cars are crashing down on one another. And I think the intensity of the suspense of, is the other half of the train going to stop? Is Max going to be able to get those brakes going, spinning the wheel to get those brakes on in time? I thought it was fantastic. I think for the era, it was solid miniature effects. For movies, it was a great crash. I thought it was awesome.
Yeah, the model work, you can tell it's models as it's going over the bridge, but honestly, it was done with, I don't know, I had such a fun time watching the way that they put it together, especially with the intercuts of all the violence going on inside. I was kind of surprised. I'm like, wow, they actually made that quite fun. It was shocking and fun, Yeah.
So I thought it was fantastic. Yeah.
I
don't remember. We were going to talk about Jerry.
Well, I was wondering, though, in the scope of all of that, why trying to stop a train, aren't there emergency brakes on trains? Like, couldn't they go to the back and just like pull the emergency brake and cause the whole train to start shutting down anyway?
This was Europe pre-regulation, so who knows?
Okay.
This isn't today's EU. But also, isn't that what Max is doing? Isn't he doing the emergency braking system?
Why didn't he do that earlier? Like, couldn't they just
because we've already told you, Andy, he has ADHD.
What was I going to do again? Gosh, I wish I could
totally
remember.
Distracted.
Oh, well.
He's like, I want to listen to some hippie music. Where are those hippies?
No, I was like, they're trying. Okay, another thing. When Martin Sheen climbs up onto the top of the train, did we in fact see anybody up there? Because he climbs back down after a pretty short time saying, oh, there are people up there. There's no way we can get up there. Okay, he was lying.
I think he was
lying.
like,
did I miss that?
But the question was he scared, or was he still in the throes of his, come down?
Well, I was like, because then he's like, oh, but you know what I can do? I can climb on the side of the train. I'm like, dude, the top is going to be a much better place to climb.
Much better. Yeah. But no handholds, right? As a mountain climber, we have to look at the fingers and feet, right?
Yeah. He needed handholds.
Because then the implication of what I'm thinking is that he came down from his drug. What do you call it again? When you have done drugs and then you are not doing drugs anymore. Withdrawal. Right. train is just unstoppable. When he would have finished his withdrawal over the course of about 6 minutes of movie time, because he comes down and he's really scared. We cut away to something else and we come back and he's like, now I'm ready. Let's go climb on the side of the train. But also it's a perfect setup for him. Like, oh my gosh, him getting shot is fantastic because of just the coincidence of blocking that he happens to be on the side of that window with the girl who catches the shadow of him through the slots of the armored window coverings, while the guard is looking at her, looks at him, shoots him through the window. He falls into Europe somewhere. And then the guard looks back into the train and is like, what?
Well, I love that so much too, because the little girl was so adamant, like, no. Yeah. Like, I was like, oh, come on, this is going to be awesome. The little girl is somehow going to get up there between his shadow and the gun. Right.
That is a missed opportunity.
Yeah. Right?
That would have been perfect for this movie, right? And then she holds up a Coke or a Pepsi or whatever.
I have a Coke and a smile. Oh yeah. No, that was great. But yeah, I was like, and I will say, as far as the effects work, the green screen effects work of him on the top of the train, that was the worst bit that we had in the entire film. And I was like, thank God that didn't go for very long, because that was terrible.
Yeah. It was also the top shots, like the top angle shots looking down on him on the side of the train as the world's going by. Those weren't great.
No. Yeah.
They weren't
great. It was better when it was just a long shot of a stunt guy on the side of the train actually doing the work. Yeah.
Praise stunt professionals and their courage, because that looked good.
It did. It really did.
Yeah.
All right. Jerry Goldsmith.
Yeah. Tell me about the music.
It works really well. He throws in like the little Italian vibe to it, so you kind of have this feel, which fits with, considering like the Italian money coming in to produce this. I think it was Italy and the UK were kind of putting the money behind this to kind of make it happen. It also has this it never feels overly positive. Like, it kind of feels a little heavy, and you're just not so sure with the tone of things. And I liked that it kind of carried its weight that way. It kind of allowed for it to be more menacing, and that was the thing. Like, even the end of the film, it's left with our colonel thinking that he's just had this whole train go off the cliff, and everybody, he's like, as he told the doctor, he's like, everybody's going to blow up anyway because of all that oxygen in there. It's just going to be a massive fireball killing everybody. He tells the president, who I'm assuming is the president who calls, that, everybody's dead. We know half of them are alive. They're now wandering the Polish countryside. Hopefully none of them are sick. They don't seem to be sick, but they're just wandering out there. And it's just kind of left that way. And I was like, that was kind of a really interesting, it doesn't wrap everything up completely in a way where I'm like, okay, so where do we go from here? And I don't know. I thought it was interesting that it left it hanging the way that it did.
Well, and I think that's one of the things that movies like this do well when they do it well, is that you leave it unresolved. Like, the disaster isn't over. We've resolved all the subsequent disasters are resolved, right? Like, the train has come to a stop. Even the thugs are given up. Like, we see them just running about at the end, right? They've given up. They're no longer a threat. The politics are largely resolved for now. The military's gone home for the day to their intimate coffee shop around the corner. But the disease, our principal threat, the principal disaster, is unresolved. And I think that is great. It is just great for 70s disaster film. Leave me thinking that this event I just spent 2 hours and 9 minutes watching is the start of a major, thing, pandemic.
Yeah, especially like we see a coffin, one of the coffins where they locked a body, like floating in the water below.
They did a hard push on that coffin. Yeah.
There are things that they could have really been playing with to set up if they were going to do a sequel. Like,
yes,
the ending, I felt like there's room here to have shown somebody as they get off the train just kind of having a little cough or something, that really could have kind of spun things and done something really interesting. It never quite does. But again, going back to Goldsmith's score, like that's why I liked the score so much, because it never completely feels resolved, and just like the film. Yeah.
It's great. It's great.
Lots of fun. I had a great time with it. I wouldn't say it's a great film, but man, is it fun. What a fun time watching this movie.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Well, we'll be right back. But first, here's our credits.
The Next Reel is a production of True Story FM. Engineering by Andy Nelson. Music by Elon Peretz, Ian Post, Saki, Oriel Novella, and Eli Catlin. Andy usually finds all the stats for the awards and numbers at the-numbers.com, boxofficemojo.com, imdb.com, and wikipedia.org. Find the show at truestory.fm, and if your podcast app allows ratings and reviews, please consider doing that for our show.
Lights flicker, reels spin, frames dance on silver screens. Celluloid dreams, digital streams, the magic of the cinema scene. From Méliès to Scorsese, Kurosawa to Kubrick, Hitchcock's suspense, Spielberg's sense, the Coen brothers' wit. Wells' deep focus, Godard's jump cuts, Tarantino's nonlinear flair, cinema's pioneers, innovators, and rebels with a flair. Brando's brooding, Streep's transformations, Pacino's intensity, Hepburn's grace, Bogart's face, Chaplin's comedic propensity. I'm ready for my close-up. Fasten your seatbelts. I'll make him an offer he can't refuse. Iconic lines delivered with passion, pathos, and a touch of muse. De Niro's method, Nicholson's grin, Hoffman's depth and range. Actors who inhabit roles make us laugh, cry, and change. Deacon's lenses, Lubeski's long takes, Kaminsky's light and shade. Stunts that astound, soundtracks that serenade. From script to score, costume to set decor. Countless hands and minds collaborate, create, and more. Foley artists, VFX wizards, the unsung heroes behind the scenes, crafting worlds, enhancing moods, bringing dreams to screens. Film noir shadows, sci-fi visions, rom-com kisses in the rain. Tracking shots and jump cuts, mise-en-scène and MacGuffins reign. Neorealism's grit, French New Wave's elan, New Hollywood's bold stance, movements that push boundaries gave cinema a new chance. But where can we share this love affair with the moving pictures? Swap reviews and top tens with our fellow cinema fixtures. Letterboxd, the site that unites us movie fanatics, logging every film from the classic to the erratic. Pro membership banishes ads, gives personalized stats galore, annual and all-time insights based on the films you adore. Filter by streaming services, get notified when watch list titles appear, see friends' ratings, track owned films customized to your heart's content here. Patron status elevates your Letterboxd game to new heights. Posters, backdrops, cast and crew images, all yours to highlight. Your name illuminated on the patrons page. Beta features to explore, like one-click list additions and the team's appreciation forevermore. Pro or patron, the choice is clear, and the next reel sweetens the deal. thenextreel.com/letterboxd, 20% off, a discount that's real. From action to art house, Bollywood to Nollywood, immerse yourself in this cinematic brotherhood and sisterhood. So if you live and breathe films, if movies move you, give Letterboxd a spin. There's so much it can do. Discover hidden gems, connect with like-minded souls. Let your film love flourish. Let it fill your heart's holes. Pro or patron, the choice is yours. But don't delay. Head to thenextreel.com/letterboxd and seize the day. Join us as we celebrate the art form we adore. Movies galore, forevermore. On Letterboxd we explore. A never-ending journey through the annals of film history, where every viewing, every review is a cherished victory.
I just want you to know, in my head, I gave you a beat.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah.
I need a little beat for that one.
You need a beat. That was awesome. Okay. Awards season, Andy. Did the film clean up because it deserved everything?
You know, considering some of those other successes with the disaster films, I was hoping that this got some nominations, but it's not the sort of film like if it did, I don't know if it completely would have deserved it, because probably. Yeah. But believe it or not, it did have one nomination at the Turkish Film Critics Association Awards, or the SIAD Awards. It was nominated for Best Foreign Film. However, it did lose to 3 Days of the Condor. Out of the 10 nominees, this came in 10th place out of 10. But hey, it got nominated.
That's 10 out of, a bazillion other movies that exist.
Right.
All right. Did it have any earned excitement at the box office? Were people throwing their money at it? Please tell me they were, please.
Well, sometimes it is just impossible to figure out the details for this part in the show. For this film, Cosmatos had a budget of $3 million. Oh, wait, no, it's $6 million. Wait, so which is it? I don't know. Which is a ridiculously large gap, right? I mean, I just don't know how that sort of info gets out there. So I don't know. Was Princeton Advertising? It seems a lot of money for Princeton Advertising. Who knows? I'm just going to go with the $6 million. Just know that if it was only $3 million, that means the film did even better. So the budget there would be $31.4 million in today's dollars. This movie premiered in Italy and Japan December 18th, 1976, before opening in the U.S. February 9th, 1977, opposite Fun with Dick and Jane, Twilight's Last Gleaming, and Wizards. This movie earned $4.2 million domestically, but apparently did screamingly well in Japan, where it earned $15.3 million alone. Weirdly, that's the only country with a box office return listed, so I'm just going to go with that. And, as the producers have said, it made its money back. All it had to do was play in Japan, and it was easy to make its money back. So, hey, there you go. Again, it's just impossible sometimes anyway. With that information, what it earned in Japan and the potentially $6 million budget, that would be a total gross of $19.5 million, or almost $102 million in today's dollars, landing the film with an adjusted profit per finished minute of $551.6 thousand. But again, it is based on some squiffy details.
I'll take your squiffy details over other people's facts. Thank you, Mr. Spock. Thank you.
There you go.
Look, I just need to ask you this question. Do you think you could make this movie today for $31.4 million?
I will say this is a film I would actually love to see somebody return to, especially in the day of COVID. Mm-hmm. I just feel like there is an opportunity to do something really fun with this. And I would love to see it remade or just reimagined in some capacity. Yeah. It was a goofy, fun disaster film. It's not one of the greats, but I had a great time watching it.
Me too. Like taking it like this, taking it as this kind of disease and not turning it into Train to Busan is perfect. Like I want to see this movie again and again with a stacked cast. Right?
Yeah,
I want to see this caliber cast. That should be a thing that we figure out. Like, who would we cast in it if we were remaking it today?
Yeah, right.
I don't want to do that right now. That's for later.
No. Another day.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll be right back for our ratings. But first, here's the trailer for next week's movie, kicking off our series of ghost stories. It's Kenji Mizoguchi's Ugetsu.
The year is 1947. The Nile River, a ribbon of lifeblood through the desert, now carries a silent terror: cholera. It is a disease as ancient as the pharaohs, but no less terrifying for its familiarity. Thousands across Egypt fall ill, struck down by a relentless cycle of vomiting and diarrhea, their bodies ravaged by dehydration. In the bustling city of Cairo, a young George Cosmatos, future director of Hollywood blockbuster The Cassandra Crossing, witnesses firsthand the swift brutality of the pandemic. Hospitals overflow, pushed to their breaking point. The daily death toll reaches a staggering 500 souls lost. Hope arrives from the skies as the United States Air Force airlifts vital supplies, saline solution, cholera vaccine, even blood plasma, a lifeline in the face of overwhelming need. Though many details of that time remain shrouded in the fog of memory, we know this experience left an indelible mark on the young Cosmatos. Years later, he would channel this childhood trauma into his art, into this film in particular. To me, he said, an epidemic seems more destructive than an earthquake, a fire, or even a bomb. We are our own worst enemies because we're killing ourselves with so-called progress. The film is more than just entertainment. It's a reflection of Cosmatos' own deeply held fears, likely born in the crucible of the 1947 epidemic. Just like the desperate passengers on that train, he understood the insidious nature of the disease, the way it could turn a bustling metropolis into a ghost town, a stark symbol of human fragility. That's why you need to head over to truestory.fm/join and join the community supporting the next real family of film podcasts before it's too late. Get extra episodes and bonus content, early access, a standing invitation to join the live stream chats when we record, ad-free versions of our shows, and access to the secret, super secret channels in our Discord community. Don't let cholera win. Subscribe to the Next Reel family of film podcasts today. Your brain will thank you. Your sanity might even send you a soft blanket and some cocoa. Mostly, you'll know you're supporting our shows and the team that keeps them coming every week, just as we've been doing since 2011. Thank you for your support. Now back to the show.
There was a nice tone jump for you. disease,
What'd you think of that?
Which is why you should
Don't let
hurry up.
cholera win. That's my favorite line. I was very happy with that.
Oh my God, it was fun.
Okay. Letterboxd, Andy, what are we going to do here? I mean, this is one of those movies, like in my heart, it's a 5-star, four heart kind of a movie. Like, but I don't know. Where do you put this?
I mean, it's not, it's one of those films that is super fun to watch. And I have this range of films that are generally like 3.5 stars I just like, I know they're not necessarily great films, but man, do I have fun watching them. Sometimes more fun than I have watching the 5-star films on my list. Mm-hmm. And I feel like this falls into that range. This is a 3-star and a heart for me, but an absolute joyful blast. I had so much fun watching it and would happily put it on again.
I think I can best you, but I'm not going to go to 5 stars. This is where this movie helps constantly sort of refine what a 5-star movie is for me. Does the movie that I'm watching help to change the way I live my life, right? Does it give me a new metaphor for how I live and things that I've learned about myself? That's not this movie. But it represents the best in class of movies that aren't that. And so for that reason, I'm going to give this a 4-star and a heart. I was delighted by my experience with this movie.
Yeah, it is a lot of fun. It's definitely, I would say this is a film that probably plays better if you're in the right mood for it. Like if you're walking into this expecting some cinematic experience, then maybe you're walking into the wrong film. But
yeah,
it's just totally one of those easy to watch late night sorts of films that's just silly. It takes itself seriously, but it's just over the top, and I had a great time. So
yeah. For sure. Right. And that's that actually is a great point. It's 2 hours and 9 minutes and it feels like about 45. Like there is enough stuff going on in this movie that it doesn't stop.
No. Yeah. It just kind of keeps trucking along.
It is
just like
unstoppable,
train.
You might say, like a train.
Right.
Unstoppable.
Well, remember, you can find me over on Letterboxd at Soda Creek Film. You can find Pete at Pete Wright, and you can find the show at The Next Reel. So what did you think about the Cassandra Crossing? We would love to hear your thoughts. Hop into the Show Talk channel over in our Discord community, where we will be talking about the movie this week.
When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
Letterboxd giveth, Andrew.
As Letterboxd always doeth.
Yes, it do. And I have one that's a 2-star from somebody who saw the same movie and didn't like it as much as we did. May I begin?
Go for it.
This is from Ian Curran. Perhaps we can stop the virus spreading to second class. That is one thing we should talk about. Right. They just killed first class.
Right.
This is also this is also a classist movie. This Plague on a Train movie wasn't good. No, not even accidentally. There's a couple of great shots and set pieces, plus the ending is bonkers. Add in Richard Harris's baseline charisma, and it's difficult to rate it 1 star, even though it deserves it. I just can't comprehend the characters in this film. O.J. Simpson plays a sketchy priest with submachine gun skills. Richard Harris plays a doctor who can fix the brain cells of disabled children. Sophia Loren plays Richard Harris's wife who married and divorced him twice. The great Lee Strasberg plays a character whose only function is his ability to speak Swedish. Martin Sheen plays a long-haired prick. Bonkers, and not in an enjoyable way because the movie was over 2 hours long. I could write the same review and still give it 4 stars and a heart.
Oh, so perfect. Well, I've got a short one by Krautsalot, 4 stars and a heart. This was part of Krautsalot's Woovember 2020 challenge. This is warm-up film number 7 for a month of action films. And Deliria Italiano 2020. This was film number 4 in that list that Krautsalot included on. Also with a quote, "Stop breathing. That is how the disease is transmitted." Another great line from our doctor. And here's the review. "A deadly virus and O.J. Simpson on the same train. Whoever wins, we lose."
Outstanding.
Oh, good times. What a film.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
Nice job. Thanks, Letterboxd.